Ah, hello, and welcome back to my very messy kitchen. Glad to have you. Okay, so today we are going to be making a pumpkin spice pound cake. Listen, it's almost September. Starbucks has started selling pumpkin spice again. That means that at my house, it is fall. It is pumpkin spice season. My husband loves everything pumpkin spice. He is a pumpkin spice kind of guy. So I have a really great pound cake recipe, and I tested it out on some friends this weekend. They all really loved it. And it's really simple because it's just a basic pound cake recipe, and then you can kind of add things to it. So like if you take the base recipe minus the pumpkin, and I'm gonna put pumpkin beer in this, then you have a really great pound cake recipe that you can kind of do other things with. You could do lemon in the summertime. You could do other like fruits and stuff if you wanted to, chocolate. Really anything you want. So today we're going to be making pumpkin spice pound cake. And pound cake is very simple to make. My big tip is that, one, you sift the flour. You don't always have to sift flour when you're making things. Like I wouldn't sift flour for brownies. Maybe I would. I have to make brownies today too for my husband's work. So maybe I'll try that. You don't always have to sift flour. And some people think that sifting flour is a non-essential step, and that may be true for some people, but for this recipe, you have to sift the flour. Your pound cake will be smooth. There will be no air pockets in your pound cake after it's baked. It's an easy way to mix all of the dry ingredients together. Sift your flour. Actually, I just sift all of the dried ingredients together. It's really that simple. And then my other big tip, and I've mentioned this before when I've made cakes and stuff, is to frequently, I like to use my KitchenAid. So to frequently stop the KitchenAid, take a spatula, scrape down the bowl, scrape the bottom, scrape the beater, so that everything is getting really well mixed together. Those are my two big tips for making really delicious cakes. Okay, so let's get to it. Okay, so I am adding 2 sticks of butter to my stand mixer. You want it to be room temperature butter. Cold butter will clump up and it just won't mix as well. And now I'm adding 3 cups of just regular granulated sugar. I'm using a 1/2 cup measure, so that's why I'm having to dip in more than once. So I'm just mixing that together. Once that's come together, I like to periodically stop the mixer, scrape the bowl, just to make sure everything is really well incorporated. You don't want any hunks of butter in your cake. I added some sour cream, about 1 cup, and now I'm going to add about 1/2 cup of pumpkin. You could add more pumpkin if you wanted to. It's not going to change anything really. If you wanted it to be extra pumpkin, you could add 3/4 of a cup. Now I'm using Foothills pumpkin beer. I'm only adding about 1/4 cup, but that's the best pumpkin beer according to my husband. I would not know. I don't really drink beer. I don't like beer, but I thought it would be fun to add it to this cake. So now I'm adding 6 eggs. I'm adding them one at a time. 6 eggs seems like a lot to me, but it really works. This cake is great. I've had rave reviews about this pound cake. And ideally you want your eggs to be room temperature as well. Although I almost never use room temperature eggs, but it's supposed to be room temperature. Okay, so now I'm sifting my flour. I don't have a regular sifter. I just have this fine mesh strainer, and I just put the flour in 1/2 cup at a time because it's kind of small. And I zhuzh it around with a spoon because that helps it go a little bit faster than hitting it against the side of my hand. And I sift the flour, the pumpkin pie spice, and the baking soda together
Normally I didn't do that in this video, but you can just put it right in the sifter and it sort of mixes it for you. But I am going to put it in the mixer, so it doesn't really matter. You don't have to do that. I just felt like it was easier. And if you have a regular sifter, this takes like half the time. I really should get a regular sifter. But, you know, this works fine. So why have extra gadgets in the kitchen if this works just fine? I don't know. Regular sifters are kind of bulky and they only take up space. And you know what? They kind of only have one use. Like, you only sift things with them. So I'm adding about 1.5 teaspoons of pumpkin pie spice and half a teaspoon of baking soda. And now I'm just dumping those dry ingredients into the wet ingredients. Always make sure that the head of your KitchenAid is locked. And now that's mixing. In the background, I am looking for the bundt pan. I couldn't find it. My husband hid it from me. I'm spraying it with a little bit of oil. And then I'm going to put flour, and I'm going to lightly dust the edges with flour. You don't have to do this step, but I really recommend that you do this, especially if you're going to use one of these pans that has a slightly different shape. I have never had an issue with cakes or things sticking if I grease and flour. Sometimes if I only grease, I have had issues with the cake sticking because you can miss spots. And if you miss a spot, the flour will show you where you've missed a spot. I set my spatula down on the other counter, and so I was like having to hold this in frame and reach for the spatula because I didn't want to get cake batter all over my counter. So I'm just putting that in there, and then I don't show this, but I am going to tap it on the counter just a few times to release any air bubbles that might be down there in the cake. And then you're going to bake that at 300 for an hour and a half. It bakes for a long time at a low temperature, but it's worth it. So while that's baking, we're going to make the icing. So the icing is very simple. It's just 2 blocks of cream cheese, some powdered sugar, and some vanilla. You could add the pumpkin beer to this as well if you wanted to. Like if you wanted to add like maybe a 1/4 cup of pumpkin beer to the icing as well, you can. You could also add some pumpkin pie spice to the icing if you wanted to. I put in my cream cheese. You want the cream cheese to be room temperature, because otherwise it will be impossible to mix. I'm just adding my powdered sugar kind of 1 cup at a time. Now I'm adding in about 1/2 cup of milk and some vanilla extract, and then I'm going to very gently ice this cake. This makes a ton of icing, and if it were a little bit thinner, I could just pour it on top, but it came out a little thicker this time. Sometimes that happens. I did get icing all over the counter when I was doing this. So it does get a little messy, but I think it's worth it. If you like pumpkin spice cake things, it's definitely worth it. And there it is, all done. If you want to see more recipes, be sure to check out Loaves and Dishes, and thanks for watching.